changed my deal. That's unfortunate, because once you've got yourself a deal, you've got yourself a deal. But that my deal no longer works for me. Again, that's unfortunate, because once you've got yourself a deal, you got yourself a deal. Is it possible for me to change my deal? Yeah, only if the lender agrees to change the deal. What if the lender says no? No change. Original deal stands. It's not necessarily what we wanted to hear, but that's the way it plays out in the courtroom. That's the way it plays out in the courtroom. Now, one of the things that way it plays out in the courtroom, judges are not real sympathetic to life experiences interfering with your ability to pay. All the judge, you guys ever watch Judge Judy with the dog whisperer? I like the dog whisperer. You ever see the dog whisperer? I love the dog whisperer. Caesar Milan, what's he do with the dogs when they act up? Right? Stop in their tracks. It's kind of sort of what it's like being in a courtroom in front of a judge saying, Your Honor, but I know I had a deal, but here's all the bad things that exactly. That's exactly. He doesn't want to hear it. Especially if it's a breach of contract action. If it's a breach of contract action, judges generally get very, very upset when you try to explain to them the deal. Why? Because you're basically telling them, Your Honor, you're not smart enough to read the contracts and understand what it says, so let me explain it to you. They don't respond well to that. Their response is generally, I can read. Let me read what the deal is. And you're trying to, essentially, when you're arguing in front of a judge, you're saying, I want to change the deal. Listen to me, because I want you to consider the deal I want it to be, as opposed to the deal that you actually have. That's what it is. Okay? So contract law applies here. Now, there's something I want you to understand about promissory notes and collateral. Okay, is this underlying concept is a borrower's obligation to pay is independent of the collateral. What does that mean? The collateral is repossessed and sold. The borrower is on the hook for the unpaid balance on the loan after the collateral, the sales proceeds from the collateral have been paid or applied to the loan balance. The unpaid balance on the loan after the application of the sales proceeds is called the deficiency balance. The general rule in our society is the borrower is on the hook for the deficiency balance. Now there are exceptions to that rule, but the borrower is every bit in a position where if they cannot find an exception to that rule, they're on the hook for the unpaid balance on that loan. That's the way it works. I have sued more people on auto loans for real estate deficiencies than I care to mention. Okay? That's the way it works. There are exceptions to that rule, though, as it relates to real estate secured loans. And we will talk about those. But you're every bit looking for one of those exceptions. If you can't find one, that's an unfortunate development. Then you're looking at either writing a check or you're looking at a bankruptcy. One of the two. Okay? Also, I put it up here. These are sections of the Code of Civil Procedure. They're also frequently referred to as California's anti-deficiency statutes. They represent some of those exceptions to that rule. That is law. That is legal authority supporting my position. This is what I'm going to tell you. These are the exceptions, and I'm going to talk about these in greater detail as we move on. But this is actual law that we're going to be talking about that are exceptions to the general rule that you have to pay that deficiency balance. Got that? Got that? Now, before I start talking about these exceptions, is I want you to have a fundamental understanding of how this works. Then we'll get into short sales. Okay? But before I start going any further, these are very, very important words that I want you to understand. So whenever you hear me start mentioning one of these words, here on the back of your neck should stick up. You should get goosebumps. Oh, it's one of those important words that attorney guy was talking about. I want to pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
The first three words are legal words. I'm going to start with the easiest of the four words. But it's a non-legal word, but it's a great word. And that first word is discretionary. I love that word. It's the best word God ever invented. Discretionary. What does discretionary mean? Discretionary means one's exercise of his own free will. The power to choose for oneself. It's a great word. You understand the meaning of that word, it will go a long way towards understanding how all this works. Okay? Generally speaking, the banks have discretion, the borrower does not. When the borrower stops paying, he's in what's called breach of contract. He's in breach of contract. He's the bad guy. The lender's the victim, generally speaking. Okay. The bank then has certain rights and remedies it can exercise in order to get its money. Which rights, which remedies it employs are discretionary with the lender. How they exercise that discretion varies from homeowner, from borrower, from borrower, from borrower, from borrower. That's why you will see disparate treatment from household to household to household. And you may say, that's not fair. But what did our parents tell us when we were growing up about life being fair? Yes, life's not fair. Right? Now, that was discretion. Deficiency, we already mentioned that already. That's the difference between the sales proceeds and the balance on the loan. That's the unpaid balance after the sales proceeds have been applied to the loan. That's called a deficiency. Reinstatement. Now, I don't know why, but I'm getting a lot of calls as of lately. Maybe it's just within the last 30 days. Homeowners saying, I got money to bring my loan current. My lender said, no way, Jose. Well, they don't want my money. Helen, what do I do to save my house? I said, that's unfortunate. Well, when's the sale date? Tomorrow. That's unfortunate. That's an unfortunate development. You do, I'll talk about reinstatement. Reinstatement refers to your right to bring your loan current to keep the house. There's also another right, the right of redemption. These are statutory rights. Redemption is the right to pay off the loan to keep your house. And we'll get into that a little more detail here in a minute. A foreclosure, simply stated, that's the bank's repossession of the house. That's the process or procedure by which the bank repossesses the house. We'll talk about that too. We talked about sufficiency. That's discretionary. There are two types of foreclosure, ladies and gentlemen. In California, there's two ways a lender can go about repossessing your house. They can do it through the courts, or they can do it outside of the courts. If they do it through the courts, that means you're being sued. That's called a judicial foreclosure. That's called a judicial foreclosure. And an out-of-court foreclosure is called a non-judicial foreclosure. In a non-judicial foreclosure, a non-judicial foreclosure is very, very informal. It's outside the court system. It involves two letters. Two letters. The first letter is called a notice of default. The second letter is called a notice of sale. And then guess what? No more letters. Property sold. Home ownership just came to a screeching halt. It's over.